Okay, so I wanted to talk now about the dynamics of space and making linear ground contact with humanoid systems that aren't made from the humanoid systems here. Obviously, the carrying of the ground type or of or, or phase nuclear phase like expanse. Whenever we can use technology to make linear contact with humans that are like parallel to our civilization, since they'd be parallel or linear to us from growing out of these robots. Obviously, in our machines, they would, from these embryo labs and some sort, they would obviously indicate different types of, um, of these bond phases that we usually get from growing inside of like a human. Whenever if we grow in the robot, we can save different types of currents and or phase matter interactions from these different satellites, or satellite dishes that we successfully sustain on the ground, and collecting these different transferrings of these waves going through the four states of matter that will obviously sustain these different harnessings of light and energy, since we know that light source would obviously release these different types of particle phases and or electronic charges, and we can collect these charges over time by harnessing them with these nuclear tools, and as we harness them, we can like make linear humans that would be like another universe, probably like mechanical. They look like humans, would be like humans, have flesh and blood, a heart, and everything, but they would probably just continuously, like, either like just continuously build big giant machines and robots, like things that are like huge as fucking space, and or things that are like be able to have the capability of living in like underwater environments or environments in space, all these different things because they all have niches, and the computer would store these different currents as they age into the embryo, or the egg, and it would just like it would make us see how different linear like another planet of humans would be because they would be growing here on Earth, but they wouldn't be you know like us from Earth because they would be growing out of a machine. Obviously, there's other phases that we can obviously involve like having these different types of technological tools or robots inside of the embryo as they're aging. So whenever the robots, we inject these little robots. Obviously, you have to wait to get a little older, and or inside we have to put them inside the embryo before they start growing, kind of, and we have to super encase it inside of these another shell. So it's not really that complex. Well, a little complex, but like have these robots inside, you know, um, like amplifying different types of signals and or waves and or designing different types of parts for like different types of wireless transferrings to their body and or molding different things so that their body would be able to accept these different types of linear transfers of the wave systems connected to the satellites and space in these different sectors of space. So like it could be connected to like a satellite dish around Neptune or a satellite dish around Uranus, and so the civilization and or these artificially grown humans would would be adapted to a different trajectorized distance than the other humans. I mean, obviously we can do that ourselves, but we have the storage in our current from our time of today or whatever, and like people just under the clouds or whatnot. But I mean, I was working on implants, and like we could make implants that that are connected to satellites, and I'm not really gonna. I don't know how. Like, I wouldn't really charge, but like it would probably be like cell phone service. If you want them, you can get them. You can take them out. You can keep them in. You can have your body and your heart rate sustained around a different sector around the galactic center. You can choose a satellite and the distance that you want to be in, either closer or further away from the sun, and the signal that you're getting would be a direct signal that Earth isn't getting, because the galactic center makes these different spin currents around different sectors of the full sphere. Since the full sphere makes these different magnitude phases and or current spins and or transfers of currents, these satellite dishes would be around them, making these different transferring of different types of waves, electrons, particles, clusters, different types of conductivity from interacting with space and our other planets. Since they would do that either at a distance phase from the other planets and or a distance phase of like nearby solar systems and or other stars. The satellite dishes would be in that domain range around these different sectors of the sun. Since the Earth will only be in a sector constantly going at its rate and speed, this will brighten out how we collect more of the light and harness the light. Since we could now successfully harness the light by making these different dynamic machines on the electronic ground and harnessing them with these nuclear tools. Again, I think I talked about that in my last video. And we can transfer the ripples of these different electronic waves corresponding to where the positions of our satellite dishes are, or satellites are, and our different dynamic satellite dishes to transfer these large packets of data corresponding to where they are positioned around the sun, and how far away they are, or how close, corresponding to this thermal translation, would be how we could get more of the full radius of the sun instead of getting a sector like what we are just getting today with just being on the planet. But since that would be, we would be, it would make more of a mathematical dynamic because we would be getting more ratios to accomplish more faster, which would be warping civilization to expand at a faster rate than just where Earth is and its speed and us traveling to get to the full radius of the sun and at the time rate that it reaches in a light year, which it takes a light year, which we can get different dynamic magnitudes in like one sector, or while we're in one sector, instead of waiting to get the full sphere, we can adaptively get different sectors of the sphere and different angles too, which would make different dynamic phase matter interactions in our targets or interactions with space. So example, we could be by the north and the south pole of the sun. Like let's see, this is the sun, right? And then this is Earth back here orbiting around the center, right? Obviously. And then like we can have satellites that just go straight up or straight down and like go over the top of the sun and over the bottom. North and South Pole as we see its axis and the mass that it's sustaining in a different way, interacting with other polar regions of the universe, and how it could completely change how we get different types of electromagnetic frequencies that we couldn't really get because we were only around the say this big ball. We're only around this sector. We're only getting the magnitude waves that's around the sector. In the middle of the star, So since we'll be open to new different electronic phases, our mechanical universe would obviously indicate different regions of space and time that we've never been able to reach linearly as just individual humans. Our mechanical universe would be able to reach different types of ranges of space and time in our universal time that would just be so far out that it would make us expand rapidly into this dynamical, like thing that like so many different types of robots, so many different types of just like far out, and to help us expand to these nuclear distances and um, not to decay civilization, but more to expand civilization. Help us expand and like it would just be help us grow in these new waves to these nuclear distances from exploring the galactic center in more ways than we've never explored before. We can also explore these other nuclear type sustainers or the gas planets and their orbitals to put these different things on them to interact with the gas planets and or interact with deep space, because we can send things in space just using different types of lasers in our heart, making these different satellites to get closer to the sun and make these powerful beams that can just shoot far, far out into deep space. But that's what's like when we harness these types, harness the sun's energy into our satellite dishes to shoot really powerful waves out into space or deep space, and or it can just travel out by the gas planets and go into deep space and send out these different types of quantum packets and or small like electron packets and or other things that we can like shoot out lasers with. And it would be great because it we can make gravitational contacts with these different bendings, these different mass that bends mass in space, and these different foldings of our universe. And since we would successfully make electronic contact or contact to these different gravitational points, it would be like the most coolest thing. But I mean, I could talk about that forever. Again, we can make other things like we can make a base on the moon with these big giant machines that could send that could shoot lasers out to these other machines or other orbitals around gas planets. So it would be like a bridge from the moon and the laser that's shooting to the moon of like Jupiter, and like since it would be sustained as it's going around Jupiter, it would make like a giant like current that would be able to sustain the transferring of particles at a high speed that we've never even we could never do before, because it would just transfer different phase matter corresponding to the electromagnetic field of Jupiter and what it's sustaining, since we would have like this machine on the orbital inside of its electromagnetic field. Jupiter, the storm or something, would send like these clusters of data through our laser or our spattle lasers and to our moon, and then we could sustain it on our moon, since the charge of our moon would be way too neutral, and or a different attraction of these different particles to correspond to its current, and we could see what it's like whenever we can successfully filter them or sustain them on the moon to like make different types of contacts to the ground and or not. But it's more like antiparticles, particles, different types of antihydrogens or hydrogens, alpha particles, and stuff like that. So it's really cool things that we can do, or we could like also have other like satellites or something sustaining different types of spattle bridges from our moon to like or spaceships to other orbitals all at once, depending on if we're all in the same sector around the galactic center, and we would widely indicate a large quantity of binomial numbers that we've never could do before, and it would completely change how like fast we like harness these different types of particle sources, or how we can interact with them, or how we can sustain them, or trap them, or bend them, or make them ripple. We could do so many different things with them. It's just like really interesting, if you think about how big the micro universe is and how many machines we could make just to do things with them besides collide them. Because colliding them would just be making them into subatomic particles whenever we could use them to do other things by sustaining different types of currents, sustaining different types of attractions of mass in space and time, bending different types, making different manifolds, or like making these different types of artificial magnetic fields with them, and or their clusters of electrons, making these different attractions to like if they're on the ground or if you're in a jet or in space, above the clouds, and or you're flying through, or we make different types of subatomic black holes by sustaining different currents. So either a black hole or a big giant charge for sustaining these clusters. So I mean, there's lots of things we can do, and it would be like that the best quantum transferring of data by sustaining these particles into like maybe this black hole, and the subatomic black hole with these different machines and satellite dishes, and like it would transfer all of these data, like spin transfer of currents of electrons super fast, and or particles or photoelectric, with these photoelectric effects or constant dynamics, and like we would just be transferring things like at the speed of light, like that we never could before, faster than we could transfer things with the internet. It was like whoa. Well, oh my geez, I just, sustained this subatomic black hole in this little box over here, or I trap electrons, or I'm like, making these different bendings of going deeper into the subatomic world using nuclear energy and making different types of radiation effects, making different types of medical tools and or sources that can help us survive or expand into space, or these quantum like gravitational interactions to make different artificial magnetic fields that would have like different radiation sources to help us and stuff like that. And I can talk about it forever. Like I can talk about like thousands of different ways we can make radiation, thousands of different ways we can sustain these particles. I mean, but it's all just different things that you would probably have to talk about, so with me or something like that.